In this series of lectures, I'm going to be talking about you. I'm going to be talking about your body. I'm going to be speaking about your body's amazing ability to heal itself. The human body was designed to heal itself. Little two-letter word there, if. The human body was designed to heal itself if you give it the right conditions. We all know that if we cut our finger, it will heal. But if you cut your finger and you keep opening it and you put some dirt in there and some manure in there, it's not going to heal very well, will it? So the human body will heal itself if you give it the right conditions. And one of those conditions is pulling the skin together. Do you know an old Australian bush remedy is if there's a cut, you pour pine pitch in it. That's the pitch out of the pine tree. And as it dries, it pulls the skin together. It's also disinfectant. Another old remedy is to cut the head off a bull ant. You familiar with the bull ant? Big ant in the Australian bush. And put the pinchers either side. And as rigor mortis sets in, it goes hard, and those pinchers will hold that cut together. And it must be kept clean. You see, your skin is like a suit of armour, and as soon as the skin is cut and the blood is exposed, then of course harmful pathogens from the air can get in. So there are basic conditions for that cut to heal. It'll heal if you give it the right conditions. That same healing power is all through the human body. That same healing power that can heal a cut in the skin can heal the body all the through. So then the question arises, so if the human body has been designed to heal itself, why are so many people sick? Isn't that true? Why? Now this question, why, we'll be exploring. Newton's third law of motion states that to every action there is an equal and an opposite reaction. In other words, there's always a reason if someone's not healing. And Rudyard Kipling, he wrote a whole poem on it, and I'm going to give you the first stanza. I have 6 trusty serving men. They taught me all I know. Their names are what, why, when, where, how, and who. Do you have your 6 trusty serving men? Do you take them everywhere you go? And if your specialist or your doctor or your naturopath gets impatient at your lots of questions, rise, politely excuse yourself, and leave, and don't pay the bill. Because you are employing them to do you a service. Do you know, we, the consumer, have power. And it is when we, the consumer, always very politely, of course, treat it like this, that's what will change the system. I'm afraid too often people just accept what they are told without investigating. We all should be private investigators, investigating why these things are so, and the best person to begin the investigations on is the person in the mirror. Is that right? Why are these things so? I love the private investigator part of being a naturopath nutritionist, but I like to think that my main role is that of a teacher, and I love teaching people how to be their own doctors. So if the human body was designed to heal itself, and I feel we have established this, then the question is, why are so many people sick? I'd like to tonight look at probably one of the main theories today. Actually, there are 2 theories which we will touch on. I call them the gene theory and the germ theory. A person's sick because it's in the genes. A person's sick because the germ made them sick. But do you know, with the gene theory, they are stating today that only 2% can be applied to the genes. That's not much, isn't it? Because the fact is, genetics may load the gun, but it is lifestyle that pulls the trigger. So my mother died a cripple in a wheelchair at the age of 51 with rheumatoid arthritis. I have strong inherited genes to rheumatoid arthritis, but you've probably noticed I'm not dead and I'm not in a wheelchair. I'm so glad that even though genetics loads the gun, it is lifestyle that pulls the trigger. My mother, unfortunately, did not know all the things that came together to cause her sickness. But I do. That's why I believe the only hope of better things on planet Earth is the education of people in the right principles. And that's why I'm here tonight. And I think that's why you're here tonight, to know why. So let's have a look at the gene theory. And we're going to go to the CBD. The CBD is the central business district of the human body, the inside workings of the cell. And we're going to be going in there just about every lecture. Because to know how the body heals, you need to know how it works. And to know how the body works, you've got to go right into the very heart of the cell. Because we are just a bunch of cells: eye cells, brain cells, tissue cells, bone cells, pancreatic cells. And we're going to go to the very centre of the cell tonight, and we're going to have a look at, in the very nucleus of the cell is the DNA. What's the DNA? It's the genetic code. The genetic code inside our cells determines the colour of our skin, colour of our hair, whether our hair is curly or whether our hair is straight. My father died early this year at 92, and he hardly had any grey hair. My mother, when she died at 51, hardly had any grey hair, so I didn't think I had any grey hair until I looked in the mirror with my glasses on. Oh, it's amazing what you see when you look in the mirror with your glasses on. I saw my sisters last week. They have no grey hair. We've all got brown hair. It's in the genes, whereas my husband's, Michael, he's 60 and his hair is white. And his mother was white at 50 and his father was white at 50. So it's in the genes. Nothing I do will change the fact that I'm 5'2" with eyes of blue and have brown hair at my age. Nothing I do will change that. So it seems like a tiny little step to say, nothing I will do to change the fact that my mother died at 51 with rheumatoid arthritis in a cripple in a wheelchair, and so will I. Can you see the reasoning there? Because nothing we do will change the colour of our hair. Even if we put a bottle on and make it another colour within 1 month, what have we got again? We've got our original colour. Nothing we do can change that. But the good news is we can change our DNA to the better or to the worst. And that's our lifestyle. It's called epigenetics. You might have heard about it. The effect of our eating habits and our lifestyle, the effect it has on our cells. So let's have a look at this DNA. It made headlines in the newspaper. 1953, secret of life had been discovered. Watson and Crick's, two scientists, had been able to unravel the DNA. And when it's unravelled, it can be 2 metres long. And there are 23 chromosomes from our father, 23 chromosomes from our mother. You've probably seen photographs, or not photographs, I'm going to get a photograph of this, illustrations. A lot of information in this DNA. And if you were to put all the information in this DNA into alphabetical language and put it into paperback books, pile them on top of one another, it would go to the moon and back a few times. I can hardly get my mind around that sort of information. Do you know the psalmist in Psalm 139 verse 14, he says, I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvellous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well. Now that psalmist didn't know what I'm showing you here tonight. Is this incredible DNA. And it's all coiled up inside our 100 trillion cells. Quite phenomenal. What's the DNA made up of? It's made up of the food we eat. The outside strands is made up of polysaccharides, and polysaccharides basically means many sugars. And everything we eat is made up of these many sugars. That's the outside strands. The inside bands, that's made up of amino acids, and amino acids is a breakdown from the protein we eat. And the glue that glues these two together is minerals. And the food that has the highest mineral content is our vegetables, and of our vegetables, the highest content is in your greens, your dark green leafy vegetables. Hippocrates said, let food be your medicine, and medicine be your food. And he didn't know what I've just shown you, that our very DNA is made up of the food that we eat. And when I look at some supermarket trolleys, I wonder how their DNA will ever be made. because the food that's in that trolley has no nutrition in it. Unfortunately, so many minds today are moulded by media, moulded by what it says on the television. But unfortunately, most of what you see on television is false science. You've heard of false science and true science? There's a big difference. What I like to use is three things. I like to use history, I like to use basic anatomy and physiology, and I like to use common sense. It's not very common today, is it? You know, there's been a death and no one attended the funeral because no one knew he died. It was the death of common sense. It has to make sense. We're constantly being remade. We're being remade according to the pattern, according to the DNA. We've got new eye cells every 1 to 2 days. We've got new cells that line our gastrointestinal tract every 3 to 5 days. Now, we're going to go on a journey through our gastrointestinal tract, and we're going to be doing that on Thursday night. In this journey, we're going to start at the mouth and go all the way through to the other end. It's a fascinating journey. And the cells that line that gut are remade every 3 to 5 days. I think it's every month we've got a new skin. Where does the old skin go? Isn't that why we wash our clothes and wash our bodies and wash our sheets and vacuum our floors? We're constantly shedding off our skin. We've got a new liver. It's about every 6 weeks. New bones about every 3 months. We're constantly being remade according to the pattern, according to the formula, according to the blueprint inside every cell. What I want to show you tonight is how that new cell is made, and we're going to make a new gastrointestinal tract cell. All the information is in the DNA. But that DNA, even though Watson and Crooks were able to pull it out and fold it back, it cannot leave. And so a photocopy is made. It's called RNA. The photocopy is made and it travels down to another section in the cell called ribosome. And ribosome is a little factory where the new cell is made. Do you know there's a literal city inside that cell? It's incredible. So we come down to the little factory, ribosome, where the new cell is made. And for purposes of illustration, I'm going to explain it like the building of a brick wall. So the first brick goes down. It's an amino acid. Maybe it's tyrosine. Then the next brick goes down. It's an amino acid, phenylalanine. Then the next brick goes down. It's methionine. Then the next brick goes down, lysine. Can you see what's happening here? Every brick is a different amino acid, and they fit into the next amino acid just like a jigsaw, according to the pattern, according to the formula. And every 3 to 5 days, out pops a new gastrointestinal tract cell. You see, lining the gastrointestinal tract are villi, like this, which we would look at in detail on Thursday night. The new cell is made down here. It travels up every 3 to 5 days, and away it goes again. So every 3 to 5 days, a new gastrointestinal tract cell is made. Well, what about someone with Crohn's disease, colitis, ulcerative colitis, gastritis, irritable bowel syndrome? If that is true, how come they don't heal in, let's be generous and say, 2 weeks? Is that a reasonable question? I'd like to suggest that it's very reasonable. So why aren't they healing? Well, let's begin by looking at how the new irritable bowel syndrome cell is made. So a photocopy is made of all the information. It comes down to ribosome. And let's look at how the new irritable bowel syndrome cell is made. The first brick goes down. It's tyrosine. We're ready for the next brick, and there's a piece of information missing. Oh dear, what are we going to do now? What do we put there that it's missing? And there's a rogue cell, and this rogue cell is a breakdown from chemicals, heavy metals. Body doesn't know it, doesn't recognise it. It's floating around looking for somewhere to poke itself, and it sees a gap and in it goes. Now we're ready for methionine. Well, where's methionine going to fit? It'll somehow try and fit there somewhere. And then another problem has just arisen. The person's short in minerals, so it can't be glued properly. And now we've got another problem. There's another piece of information missing. What are we going to do now? Well, there's another rogue cell, another breakdown from genetically modified foods, damage from electromagnetic field. Well, they're there. We're exposed to them all. And every 3 to 5 days, out pops a new, we'll call this one an irritable bowel syndrome cell. In that very simple illustration, I tipped the iceberg, really, of why people aren't healing. You see, if the formula's not right, if the blueprint is not right, the new cell cannot be made right. Michael and I have 4 boys and 4 girls. And of our boys, we've got tilers and builders and landscapers. And before they tile, before they landscape, before they build, they must make the plan. They must have a plan. It's the same with our cell. There must be a proper plan for it to be made properly. And if the plan is not right, well, it cannot be made right. So what I'd like to look at now is I'd like to have a look at why the damage. What has caused the damage? 92% of DNA damage, the research is showing today, is caused by a mineral deficiency. So 92% of the damage is caused from a mineral deficiency. So how could Aussies be mineral deficient? Jamie Oliver, he's done a lot for Australian cooking. Australians even eat greens today. Why do I say greens? Because it's in greens that you get your highest amount of minerals. And minerals are not lost with the cooking. It's only lost if you throw the water away you actually cook it in. So how come Aussies are mineral deficient? Now, if someone's living on fast food, obviously they're going to be mineral deficient. But there are people today in Australia, they're having their fruits and vegetables every day, and they're still mineral deficient. Well, we have to now look at the way the food's grown. You see, traditionally, ground was always fed compost between crops. When you got a crop in the ground, say you got tomatoes in the ground, that tomato plant will pull certain minerals out of the soil to cause the tomatoes to grow. And when you harvest your crop, you got to put that minerals back into the soil before you put your next crop in. That's why it's a good idea to do a tomato crop and then the next crop do a root crop. You alternate your crops because different vegetables take different minerals out of the soil. But before your next crop goes in, you got to feed it with compost. We'll look in a minute at how the compost's made. But basically the breakdown of food, the microbes are in the soil. So if the soil's deficient, the plant's going to be deficient, and the human that eats that plant is going to be deficient. There's a book called The Calcium Lie by Dr. Robert Thompson, and he shows in his book that 50 years ago, we had 50% more nutrients in our soil than we got today. Why? It's because of glyphosate, Roundup? They've always said it's safe. You know what they're doing in the last 6 months? Sorry, it's not safe anymore. Have you seen that? And in Australia, they grow wheat with Roundup. You may have heard of the court case in America. A farmer won $82 million. He was awarded because of the damage done from Roundup. So there's been a big backtrack on that. So a lot of vegetables are grown with that, but also superphosphate. Superphosphate produces show ponies of vegetables, doesn't taste any good, just looks good, but deficient in minerals because that superphosphate locks up the nutrients in the soil so the plant can't get them. No wonder so many are mineral deficient. But there's something else that's causing the mineral deficiency, and that is stimulants. The stimulants are leaching minerals out of the body. Sugar. It is said that sugar, the pure crystallized acid that's been extracted from the sugar cane plant, I'm not referring to honey and maple syrup, I'm referring to the refined sugar that has no nutrients in it. Because it's got no nutrients in it, when it gets into your body, it is an acid that is toxic to the body, and so what it does now, it pulls the minerals out of your body to try and calm down this toxic acid. It is said that sugar leaves your body better dressed than when it went in. It went in naked and it comes out dressed with your minerals. You talk to doctors today, especially orthopaedic surgeons, they're finding breaks in children's bones that they have never seen in young children before, and they're all putting it down to the sugar. I lived in a rainforest raising my children. They used to fall off horses and fall out of their Tarzan vines in the trees. No broken bones. No broken bones. And we used to eat all the vegetables straight out of the garden. And we didn't eat sugar. Caffeine. We call this one Australia's darling, is that right? What's a darling? Something they love. But most people don't realise that caffeine interferes with the neurotransmitters in the brain. Do you know what that means? You can have a young couple that are having a cup of coffee every day, maybe the lady has a bit of chocolate, the guy has a Coke. They can give birth to a baby with a DNA that has damaged genes to the neurotransmitters in the brain. You know what that means? They can give birth to babies who have a tendency to attention deficit syndrome, a tendency to Asperger's, autism, all because of the parents' habits of having a cup of coffee a day. Eee, they don't tell you that on the coffee packet, do they? Caffeine not only leaches the minerals, but it's also damaging the DNA. Sugar leaches minerals, but it also damages the DNA. We had a lady do our program. She brought her 9-year-old daughter who had type 1 diabetes. The mother was quite large. And as I'm consulting, the little girl said to her mother, "Mum, tell her what you do." The mother looked a little embarrassed. And then the little girl said, "She eats a bag of lollies a day." The mother looked very embarrassed. How can I tell that mother that that bag of lollies a day weakened her pancreatic gene to the point that her daughter was born with a weakened pancreatic genes? A 9-year-old hasn't been on the planet long enough to damage her pancreas. We'll be looking at, let me just double check, we'll be looking at diabetes tomorrow night. And I will tell the story how within a couple of the days that little girl had reduced her insulin by half. Wow. It can be turned around, and it can be turned around very effectively and quite quickly. But what we're looking at, the DNA, that's why we have to have our detective hat on. Many are sick through ignorance. That mother did not know that her habit of lolly eating was going to damage her pancreatic gene to the point that she would give birth to a baby with a weakened pancreas. She would never have eaten them if she'd known that, would she? Many are sick through ignorance. What also causes minerals to be leached is alcohol. There's no safe dose of alcohol. It's a toxic poison, and not only is it leaching nutrients out of the body, but it is also causing damage to the DNA. So we're getting babies born today with fetal alcohol syndrome. The DNA has been damaged because of the parents' drinking habits. Tobacco. Children are being born today with weakened lungs, less alveoli in the lungs and holes in the alveoli the honeycomb that holds the alveoli together, all because of their parents' smoking habits. We're looking at what causes damage to the DNA. What also can cause damage to the DNA is genetically modified foods. Unfortunately, Monsanto is so powerful and so wealthy and so big, they win every court case where Australians want GMO to be labelled on the products. Happens in America too, it's unfortunate. So how do you know? Well, you don't, unless you buy organic. You see, if an organic farmer uses genetically modified seed, they lose their organic status. So grow as much as you can yourself. And the more Aussies that buy organic, the more organic will be available. One organic tomato will give you 9 times the iron of a conventionally grown tomato. See, you get much more value for your money, even though organic is more expensive. Genetically modified food happens when the DNA of 2 different species are spliced together to create, for instance, DNA of the tomato with the DNA of an Atlantic salmon, hoping to create a tomato that grows in the snow, but actually it doesn't grow in the snow. And it has 5 centres instead of 1, and there's all these strange things happening. And when the person eats that tomato, it breaks down to molecules that your body cannot recognise and has the ability to damage your DNA. Did you know that Vladimir Putin, the Russian's president, he's passed a law that any Russian who grows or sells genetically modified foods is to be considered a terrorist? Whew. He's even giving land away to Russians who will grow food organically, non-GMO. You put his name and GMO in Google that and you'll read the spiel. He says, we Russians look across at the West, over-vaccinated, over-medicated, overfed, sitting in front of boxes every night in their lounge rooms, eating food that has no nutrients, he said, and we know it's weakening the West. Is he right? Yeah, absolutely right, yeah. What also can cause damage to the DNA is electromagnetic field excess. We are electrical people. There's a spark of electricity in every cell. It's the excess that the problem is. So we get excess when we buy houses under big electrical towers. Do you know it used to be 50 years ago it was illegal to build a house under those towers? You go to housing estates today and they're there. And they're the cheapest house in the whole estate. The farmer knows that if his cows graze under those big towers, then there are stillborns and deformed calves born. We've got to keep away from those big wires, but probably where we need to be most mindful of is what's in our home. Wi-Fi, if you've got it, it should be switched off every night. And in your bedroom, there should be no technology. Aim for a technology-free bedroom. We spend 1/3 of our life in that room, don't we? Do you know the current figures are 80% of Americans sleep with their iPhones? Well, you know Australia's not far behind America in so many things. But I need my iPhone to wake me up. Well, I've got some good news. It only has to be 2 foot away and you've reduced your exposure by 2/3. But many people sleep with it under their pillow. Yep. We're not even going into what some people are watching or how much they're watching. We're just looking at today how much exposure. And if you talk to breast surgeons, the amount of young women that are coming in with breast cancer, and it's right in the breast where they used to put their phone in their bra. You can even buy sports bras today with pockets in them to put the phone in it. So don't have your iPhone on you. And you know the worst place to put your laptop is where? Your lap. There's about 8,000 studies to show this, that young girls having the laptop on their lap between the age of, say, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, let's fast forward to in their 30s, having a baby, 47% miscarriage, because it's affecting the developing of the eggs when they are just in adolescence. So have it on a bench, have it on a desk, have it away for you. Some people sleep with a virtual Christmas tree around them, yeah? All the technology. You've got to charge your phones, charge them in the far corner or ideally in the next room. We should be sleeping in the dark, no light. That's what we should be doing. So please beware of your electromagnetic field exposure. There must be rules in the home. We're such a technological age. Be very cautious with the children. Have you read that the Australian Health Department have said children under the age of 2, the safe exposure is nil? You see, babies and children's skulls aren't as thick as adults. And so there's much more damage, and it goes in twice as far into the brain, this electromagnetic field, compared to an adult brain. So be very careful with that. I fly a lot. How do they keep the kids quiet on the plane? The phone, the iPhone. You've got to remember what people did 20 years ago, actually 10 years ago. It's not that long ago. There's lots of ways to occupy without giving them damaging things that will damage them. What's the old saying? Buy now, pay later. There's a big pay later with the electromagnetic field excess we're exposed to. Also, what can damage the DNA is chemicals. It is estimated we're exposed to about 30,000 new chemicals a year. Now, finally, Roundup has been exposed to the danger that it is. I wonder what's going to be next. Have you ever wondered that? What was safe 20 years ago is now being considered toxic. So how much safe today is going to be considered toxic? Do you know something very toxic most people don't realise is bleach? And one of the most toxic combination is bleach and mould. And what do most people kill mould with? Bleach. So what are we going to kill mould with? White vinegar. It'll kill mould and it won't kill you. That's the good news. So have a look at what's in your laundry cupboard. Have a look at what's in your toothpaste, in your shampoos, your conditioners, your laundry detergent, what you're washing your dishes with. What's in your food? What's in your clothes? But the biggest chemical company in the world is the pharmaceutical company. Now, I acknowledge that a drug can save a life in a crisis, but I'm shocked at how many people on a day-to-day basis are using them. Number one killer in the world today, you know what it is? It's heart attacks, strokes. And yes, tomorrow night we're going to have a look at heart as well. And I will show you many alternatives that you can use to many of the medications people are told they've got to be on or they're going to die from a heart attack. And it's actually not true. So if you're on drugs, it's very important not to stop them or to find out which ones you can stop safely and which ones need to be eased off. A lady emailed me recently. She said, Barbara, I've got inflamed arteries in my brain. She said, I've been on prednisone for 2 years. I said, well, that's obviously not working. Can you see that? If the body can heal itself and you're on a drug for 2 years, is it working? No. So I showed her some things that she can do, and she has to ease off that prednisone very slowly. Because what happens now, the body gets addicted to it. So you've got to go very, very slowly off something like that. Also mould. Mould, we're looking at what can damage the DNA. Because if the DNA is damaged, the body cannot heal. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to show you what mould is. It's a microorganism. And a microorganism, as the name implies, it's microscopic and it's a living thing. And they're everywhere. They're in this air we're breathing, they're on our skin, they're in our nose, eyes, mouth, they're everywhere. And they are an integral part of keeping life on planet Earth running. They're part of life, but whenever cell damage happens, these microorganisms have the ability to change roles. We change roles. All through life, we change roles. I'm not dressed now the way I'm dressed on my morning exercise. I'm not dressed now the way I was dressed in Darwin 2 weeks ago. I'm not dressed now the way I'm dressed when I'm sleeping at night. We change roles. So do the microbes. And they change roles according to the environment, just as we change roles according to the environment. So whenever cell damage happens, they now become the clean-up team, or as one microbiologist said to me, Barbara, we call them the garbage collectors. So what are the garbage collectors? And you know, all the garbage collectors do is they collect garbage. Remember that. So this clean-up team, the garbage collectors, they're called bacteria. That's what bacteria is. That's what it does. So the more rubbish, the more damage, the more waste, the more bacteria. Let me give you a quick story to illustrate. Florence Nightingale, it's 1954. The war in Crimea is happening. Here's the Black Sea, here's Crimea, and down the bottom of the Black Sea is Scutari. This is the port where the wounded were being taken, and the message got back to London that 50% of the young men that actually survived the war, survived the boat trip down to the hospital, if they survived that and got into that hospital, 50% of these young men were dying in that hospital. Florence Nightingale and 35 nurses went to see what they could do. They were shocked at that hospital. It was putrid. The doctors were not washing their hands from operation to operation. There was raw sewage in the corridors. So she contacted London immediately and said, we need a sanitary commission here to investigate this. We've got a terrible situation here. And so the sanitary commission was set up. And this is what they found. They found that the hospital was built in a swamp. And they found there was a dead horse in the swamp. That's a horse. And a dead dog. This is a dead dog in the swamp. And that water was being drunk by the patients. That water was being used to wash the wounds. I'm shocked that there was only 50% death. I'm shocked that 80% of them weren't dying. So very, very quickly, while Florence and her nurses were in this hospital scrubbing and cleaning, the Sanitary Commission started to put processes in place to clean it up, to boil the water. Within 6 months, the death rate went from 50% to 2%. Wow. 6 months. That's why we cannot forget Florence Nightingale. See, there was so much damage, so much waste. There was a lot of bacteria. You see, that's its role on the planet. When Florence Nightingale came back to London, I think it was 1956 when she came back, she was hailed as a heroine. There was a welcoming party. Queen Victoria, Prince Albert were there. When she saw that, she changed her name to Mary Smith, went down the back gangplank and went home. They said to her later, why did you do that? She said, I'm not a heroine. She said, all I did was improve hygiene, sanitation, and nutrition. Got that? What's hygiene? Personal hygiene. Wash the body, wash the clothes, wash the wounds in clean water. Number 2, sanitation. Get the dead dog and the dead horse out of the water. Get the sewage out of the corridors. Clean up the house. And nutrition. Do you know she brought a cook with her? You cannot heal without nourishment. The very DNA, the very blueprint is made up of the food that we eat. She said, I'm not a heroine, that's all I did. I'm going to show you a graph now, and you will not see this graph. This is true science, so you will not read it in the Daily Telegraph. All the childhood illnesses, mumps, measles, rubella, whooping cough, diphtheria, polio, wiped out. Some of them 100%, some of them 90%, and then the vaccines were introduced. That is true. It's in every medical journal. It's true. If I can't back it up, I will not tell you. Surely not polio. Let me give you the story of polio. In London, they started putting lead and arsenic in paint and using DDT. Never heard of polio before that. This was using arsenic and lead and paint and DDT. Polio arose. Here's polio. Finally, they realised the connection, so they stopped using lead and arsenic in paint, and they stopped using DDT. Guess what happened to polio? That's the graph in the medical journals. And you've heard of Sister Kinney. She was an Australian bush nurse. There's a movie made of Sister Kinney. I think it was made in about the 40s, and Rosalind Russell acted in it. And this Australian bush nurse, she was asked to go to a polio case. Her doctor was out of town and the child was spasming, so she put hot cloths and massaged the child's leg through the night, and in the morning the child was over it. So every time she had a case of polio, she'd go and do hot packs and massage the legs. Sometimes it took a day or 2 or 3 and the child would recover. So she started a clinic. And she had children coming in who'd been in calipers for years. They'd walk out. She had piles of calipers like this, because the medical way to treat it was calipers. Do you know what that means? No polio case should ever have been deformed if they'd been treated with the hot packs and the massage. So they closed her down because they said it was unscientific. And then in Minneapolis they had an outbreak and they heard of her and they got her to come over, and she never lost a case. Never had a case of deformity. What I'm giving you is the facts. I'm just giving you the true science. Do you know there's another graph today? It's attention deficit syndrome, hyperactivity, Asperger's, autism, epilepsy, cot death. Children aren't dying of infectious diseases anymore. They're dying of neurological diseases. Well, where does that come from? It's the neurotoxins in the vaccines. A catchword that should be true for all is investigate before you vaccinate. So let's begin, or we've already begun, let's continue our look of microorganisms. So bacteria evolve or change forms whenever there's cell damage as the garbage collectors. As the environment changes, they now become the exterminators. What are the exterminators? Their name is yeast and fungus. They're very busy on the rainforest floor. That's their role. That's what they do. As the environment changes, they change. They now become the undertakers. So what are the undertakers? Well, they take away dead things. So what's their name? That's mould. And it's not long after the mould stage that the matter is now brought back to dust. And what does the preacher say at the funeral? Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. He's referring to what's about to happen in the coffin. What I've drawn for you here is the cycle of life, or the carbon cycle. And a basic law of science states nothing's created and nothing's destroyed. It just changes form. These are the players in the cycle of life. These are the performers in the cycle of life. They're not the enemy. And if they are active, the question should be asked, why are they there? Did you know in the mid-1850s, the people that lived in London drank the water from the Thames, and all the sewage from their houses went into the Thames, and they drank the water. No wonder the Black Plague happened. Huh? And so an absolutely magnificent sewage system is under the streets of London, and they're not having Black Plagues anymore, are they? And it's not because they're vaccinated or medicated. It's because they did what Florence Nightingale said. They just turned the tap off. If you don't turn the tap off, you're still going to be mopping up in the other corner. If you don't find the cause, you will never find a cure. And when Florence Nightingale read of Louis Pasteur's theory, germs cause disease, she said, this is the theory of a man of a very unstable mind. And she said, and anyone who believes it is equally unstable. So I hope that I've totally shattered the theories for you that genes and germs don't cause disease. They're not the cause of the disease we're seeing today. They're a part of the story, but the question should be asked, why are the genes being expressed? Or why are the germs there? At that point, I'd like to have a break. And when we come back after the break, I'm going to show you the true role that these microbes play in disease. And by looking at that, we'll be looking at the causes and the treatments of cancer. Thank you.